every pony, and welcome to DAG on tonight's video. Welcome to Dratta Talks, and with me tonight is
the ever-loving LivingSilver.
Welcome back to the stream, Silver. How you doing?
I'm well. It will be good to be back on stream. This is something that I do enjoy doing, and we had fun last time, so I'm ready to get back into digging into some of these decks.
Yeah, last time was kind of a fail, wasn't it? Do you remember that? I forgot to hit the record button.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Well,
no, that was fun. It was interesting. It was good.
It was good. So, and tonight on Dratta Talks, we're talking about store championships for the MLP CCG, which have finally finished. And we also have a new ban list labeling AJ, Ambassador of Honesty, now banned in Harmony. And we also have Exact Duplicate is also now banned, as well as Berry Punch and Orange Swirl. So that's grumble, said Leo.
Yeah. I want my Berry Punch back.
A lot of people do want it back. So basically, we're going to talk about store championships and how we see maybe some of these decks coming back. Now, keep in mind, we are not talking about just the winning decks. We're going to look at some combinations that haven't really been done in a meta before and actually might prove to be very good in the upcoming meta for Friends Forever. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And the first deck of tonight is LivingSilver's. So let's talk about this.
All right, so this is a little something that I like to call faithful farming. It does use Premier Twilight as the main engine of the deck. And like any other farming deck, it looks mostly to beat up its own troublemakers. For people that are not familiar with the card, what she does, in a sense, is she is able to grab back any flipped events that you flip during your face-offs. She has Studious, so she will recover in AT as well. Now, this deck and card was decent at farming before the Staff of Serkanus came, but once Staff showed up, boosting her and as a farm fighting, troublemaker fighting opponent, I guess, whatever you want to call the main in farming decks, giving her an additional 3 power and allowing her to have a free face-off using the staff. First off, made flipping her incredibly easier. Second, gives you yet another target, another way to win face-offs easily. The trick with Faithful Student as a farmer is because she snags events that you're flipping and putting them in your hand, it actually becomes a way of card draw. So if you have a staff, you start a fight with the staff, grab some events, fight a troublemaker, grab some events, maybe do a face-off with a problem, grab some events, your hand fills up really quickly. And so naturally, this deck depends on extra flips and playing events. The other function in looking at it is also secondarily a control deck. Because of the limited number of troublemakers in it, you don't always have the option of grabbing quick points just by farming. The advantage of purple is you get a bunch of tricks that you can use. Some of the tricks, by looking at this list, we have Private Journal, let you snag a card from your opponent's hand, have them flip that in the face-off. We got Spike Take a Letter for some free AT from winning a troublemaker face-off. Of course, the typical Frozen and Magicites, Burning Bridges to keep your opponents away from your troublemakers. One thing that this deck does differently than the other Faithful Student farming decks that have shown up in Hako is the addition of Holiday Spirit, Princess Luna. When you win a troublemaker face-off, you score a point. By having this in your deck, even if the opponent tries to beat up one of your troublemakers and loses, you still score a point. If you get two of them on the field, it gets pretty disgusting as the opponent just struggles.
And it also stacks with social obligations.
It does as well. So the Vanquisher in there was thrown in knowing that I would be fighting Orange Farm. School Shutdown is an amazing addition to this deck. And in addition to any purple farming deck, not only do you get to return all your events back to hand, into your deck, you get to return all the troublemakers, board wipe the opponent, and you don't have any friends yourself except for your Lunas that chances are going to be taken out, in all honesty. As far as removal, the purple is surprisingly effective at removing the opponent's friends, the ones that need to be removed. Enforced Equality is included in this deck. Very rarely is this card included in farming decks because it reduces the main to 2 power. Because Faithful Student depends highly on her double flip or repeated flips, having 2 versus 6 power doesn't matter so much when you flip a 5, a 7, and a 4. It also stops the opponent from being able to confront. Applejack could not challenge Starlight Glimmer, and on the one occasion that enough characters were amassed at the problem, that's when Napcakes comes into play and can snag even the biggest friends from Starlight Glimmer. Napcakes is also good just for removing any general small powerful token generators and stuff like that. This deck also includes Phantasmal Tail as friend removal, as well as Time Warp for friend or an additional resource removal. Those work only because staff is present. You place something on top of the deck, then you start the fight with the staff, gets rid of all the strong things, and no real expense to you other than the cost of the card itself, which unfortunately tend to be pretty pricey. The problem deck in this list is not optimized, as has been pointed out. Looking for Trouble allows your opponent the opportunity to score off it, and Dark Magic Surge, while it does save you AT on playing those events you're going to be playing so frequently, it's also only 4 for the opponent to confront, giving them an opportunity to get the rare DFO. Most frequently when I play this deck, I'm stuck on social obligations. I don't ever see another problem, 99% of the time. That also allows you to score 3 points per troublemaker that you defeat. And if you don't have a troublemaker, you can still score a point by beating up somebody with a staff. All right. This deck does amazingly well against Applejack farming. Does absolutely awful against Paradox Pony, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to the next deck.
All right. Next deck in the list is a deck from Vancouver. This deck has been talked about several times. It did win Vancouver, and the first thing we need to look at is Poppy. See Poppy.
See Pop.
See Poppy is apparently meta. I'm not so sure about that, but it is a Harmony deck running DJ main, so what's nice about DJ is, you know, if you go second, you're usually flipping your main. It's an additional draw card every turn. But I don't really want to cover too much of this deck other than the fact that nearly every single one of these cards has random somewhere in it. Babby Flurry of Hearts, pretty traditional. Weather Mare is a great inclusion. Party Mare, living it up, just traditional with Sea Poppy. And, you know, it just has a lot of cost reduction. You're basically aggroing, trying to trigger Sea Poppy as much as possible. And your opponent apparently doesn't have a hand.
The main tools, at least that I can see, I've never seen the deck in action, but just from looking at the list itself, looks like the main tools for slowing down aggro are Baby Flurry Heart and Twilight Sparkle and Spike, which both function well from slowing down Scootaloo type effects and from also to protect troublemakers as well.
Yep. And here's something to note too, and you're going to be seeing a lot of this throughout this stream, is this deck is technically 3 colors.
which does lend itself to a problem when one of the most powerful cards in the deck, that's Twilight and Spike, are both off colors.
Yes.
The only way to get that into play is two different colored motivational speeches, or I guess if you have blue friends already in play.
I mean,
but most likely it came in with the Singing Barrel.
yeah. And it looks like that we'd be starting with something like Trading Traditions, unless against an aggro deck, which would lead into Angel Wings, which then the only way to really get into your purple is Speech and Singing Barrel. I think a Fire would almost be better, but than Speech.
And so the inclusion I love that I'm sure has been talked about, Royal Spyglass.
Yep.
Does give you the opportunity to peek at the opponent's hand. And as they're playing more cards, they're going to have fewer and fewer cards to choose from. And Sea Poppy is going to be nailing it more and more frequently.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Lead Pony Badge is another key inclusion. You score a point off Sea Poppy, you can then ready her.
Exactly.
And get ready for another point in the same turn.
Yep. So there's a lot of ways to get Sea Poppy to trigger. Belly Flop simply for removal. I mean, there's not too much to this deck. It's basically score as many points with Sea Poppy as we can. Woo! And yeah, so it's Sea Poppy. I didn't want to go too much into this one. So next deck.
Sounds good. My last thought of it actually
Sure.
is Party Mare does amazing work, and never underestimate the power of a Party Mare.
No,
Every other card except for Angel Wings in this deck, well, maybe the Rainbow Dash and Pinky. Every other card is high priority removal targets.
Yep.
Which just allows Party Mare the time to amass some serious counter power before it's her turn to get removed. But
Party Mare
fantastic.
Party Mare is usually a target once you reach 3 power for me. That means get rid of it. We don't need it at 3 power. But yeah, it's been talked about a lot.
And especially with this new ban on Berry Punch, removal is going to be a little more expensive. So you're going to have to be a little more judicious. Do I need to remove that Party Mare, or do I get rid of Flary Heart and give my aggro characters a chance? Or do I take care of that Twilight Spike that keeps protecting all the troublemakers, particularly the yellow Parasprite? That's the other thing to keep in mind with Royal Spyglass that I just realized. Parasprite and Nightmare Moon are going to keep your hand empty.
Yep.
Spyglass is going to have an easy time.
Oh, yeah.
Picking those few remaining cards out of your hand. Okay, let's move on.
Yep. Next one. We got Paradox Pony. All right, so I don't know how many people saw Cursed Chords post resulting in the data from Tia, his database on the meta. And what it showed was in the Harmony meta, it showed the 2 top decks in order. Currently, you had Applejack Farm at the top in first, and Paradox Pony in second. With AJ Farm going away from the Harmony meta, you need to think about this deck. And the biggest weakness to this deck is the Paradox Pony. And keep in mind that she was very recently made legal in Harmony. If you do not know where to get her, the super value boxes. Guaranteed. So, I think Silver has an interesting story about what happened when he went up against this deck.
Paradox Pony is dumb. We should call it Paradox Pony because it needs to be doxed. I'll keep my more colorful descriptions of her to myself. For a hard to flip main, and particularly for many of the confront to flip mains, backup vocals traditionally gave you a very expensive shot at making that effect happen. Being that purple yellow wasn't common in the meta, you didn't see backup vocals repeatedly used most of the time. You didn't see it repeatedly used to lock down confront to flip mains, or just other mains with challenging flip conditions. My faithful student farming deck got wrecked by repeated paradoxing of backup vocals. 3 AT a pop. Once a few AT gens are in play, will just destroy any main that has trouble starting.
Yeah.
And that's the thoughts about that. You also have identity theft in here that can be used to duplicate any friend that is already in play, the effect of it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I ran this at both Harmony tournaments in Indianapolis and Illinois. And I'll tell you, a lot of people that were running things like either farm or another type of deck just did not like the amount of cheating this deck brings into play. Paying 3 for a rarity of generosity to choose either 2 Midnight Lunas or 2 Cadences in your discard, and one goes to your hand, one goes into play, and they just come into play, and then they're in play. One of the struggles with this deck is that I found is that if you don't draw a Paradox Pony, if you don't draw a Fluttershy backup vocals against aggro, you're not going to have a fun time. I got shut out by a blue pink Hot Wings deck because I didn't draw backup vocals, and he got rid of my Infiltrating the Hive once I drew it. So if this deck loses access to Infiltrating the Hive before a backup vocal shows up, this deck has a very hard time.
The other thing about it, particularly with resource removal, I guess you do have your backup vocals that can double as resource removal, but if old money doesn't get drawn, removal becomes significantly harder.
Yeah.
For anything but friends. I mean, you do have Catajack, 2 of them in here, and a Chrissy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the deck is great when Paradox Pony is flipped. It's not a lot of fun to play when you don't have her flipped. So, how do you stop her from flipping? Well, the easiest way is to simply score more points a turn than 1.
And I take that back. I just saw the Mage Meadowbrook. No, this deck has plenty of removal in it.
Oh yeah, it's got a lot of removal. And the thing is that none of these color racks matter to Paradox Pony either.
Which is the killer about it.
Oh yeah.
None of them, the color rack, that's the purpose of the color rack, is to keep super powerful cards in check. And when you number 1, don't need to abide by those color racks. Number 2, when it is so easy to bypass the restriction of the card returning to hand, you either portal it, with an interdimensional portal, you frighten it with Midnight, or Twicorn Twilight does her lame bouncy thing, and everything is in play.
The best starting hand I've found with this deck is simply either a Midnight Luna and a Cadence and a backup vocals, and then you bank 3 turns, discard those 2 for Infiltrating the Hive, put a yellow changeling into play, pay 4 backup vocals, flip your main. Turn 3, main flipped, 2 white friends in the discard for Element of Generosity. Fortunately,
I'm not seeing a way around Desert.
No.
Oh, just kidding. I see the Desert Mysterious Disappearance in Luna's Futures. Yeah, no, it's gross. Let's move on.
Let's move on. It is a very gross deck. All right. The next one is another farming deck that is actually core. It won the Indianapolis Core Championship by yours truly, Dratta Arcana. It's the only core farming deck out of the entire series of Store Championships. And it was gross to see this deck in action. I know I had been very against farm and core for the longest time, but Sea Pancake and I had come together to generate this deck, and oh my gosh, it worked. Rainbow Dash is still really, really good as a farming main, and especially in core. Merging it with purple gets you access to School Shutdown, gets you access to things like nap cakes and stuff. But there's something about this deck that maybe a lot of you are wondering is, can you really call it blue, purple, orange? With the number of stuff you have that you can play via those colors? What,
I in this, I mean, I guess it technically is still blue farming. It runs with the blue farming staples. But I mean, it's a farming deck. 50% of this deck is colorless cards.
yep. Yeah.
And Flash Magnus' Shield, just a fantastic addition to the tools that farming can use. Not only does it help protect your troublemakers, it helps you beat them up too. It's stronger than Ember, it's harder to remove than Ember, and it's cheaper to put into play.
Yep. And of course, if you look
And
at,
it flips higher too.
by the way, you may notice the 3 Pony of Shadows. What's the only friend?
Oh, right, yeah. When that happens, AJ is guaranteed to pop into play.
Yep. Which is, of course, a guaranteed board wipe for 1 AT.
Yeah.
This absolutely wrecks metas that aren't prepared for farm and aren't prepared for a meta where there aren't any friends. A lot of the metas that we have seen, when I was building this deck in the last week before the Indianapolis Core Championship, I was thinking, how many people are going to run friend heavy decks? And what deck can I build that would have as few friends as possible and board wipe and not care? This was the end result.
I am noticing, as a farming deck, it is going to be slow as far as farm decks are concerned.
Oh, yes.
In that, there is no point accelerator. Faithful farming has at least social obligations. A lot of AJ farming actually runs social obligations as well in Harmony.
Yep.
This does not have, I notice, I do not even remember the name of the event. When you win a Troublemaker face-off, you play it for a bonus point.
Yeah.
It would does accelerate a little, but AJ farming also has the advantage of confronting once you beat up the Troublemaker, and Rainbow Dash is not able to confront anything. The only option is Family Feud on the occasion that you have that in the play.
Yeah, no,
and feeding the front line, I take that back. 3 problems. And, okay, 4 because second chance is in here.
So the differences between Harmony farming and core farming are that in core farm, you're not looking to confront your problems. You don't care. You have to avoid confronting problems, so your problem deck has to be designed for Troublemaker face-offs. And this is the weakness that farm has in core versus Harmony. It cannot confront its problems. So you have to find a way to run either more TMs so you can score more points. And honestly, I never confronted a single problem during the tournament.
And I'm not sure how I feel about that thought. Definitely when AJ was still legal in core, you did want to confront because she built up power so quickly.
Yep.
You didn't care if someone started a single problem face-off. You were going to win anyway.
Right.
And it was just another free point. The main problem was a double face-off. Double problem face-offs because you would possibly win one for winning the flip, but the opponent scored 2 for your 1 and then sent you home away from your Troublemaker. So it sets you back a turn.
Yeah, and core, this is probably... I tried to figure out if I could do like Ocellus farm or something with that, but this was just the most efficient method I could come up with for core.
Yeah, no, this is definitely awesome, especially with the Magnus' Shield. I don't know if people have revisited Thorax farming since the new set's been released.
I don't think it has been reviewed again.
It did okay in the beginning. Before AJ was banned, it was still a viable deck in that meta. It did okay, I remember, at the practice tournament at BabsCon last year.
Right.
It may be a lot stronger in core this year without Applejack present, and I don't even know what additional tools, without looking from the new set, would help it, but I guarantee you there's something in there.
I mean, you have Yonas now, but honestly, I don't know what else in yellow would, besides, because Friends Forever didn't give us any way of getting critter tokens. So there's no way for Thorax Farm to generate more critter tokens than what's already available. But there's definitely some yellow tools that maybe help it.
Just playing yellow friends.
Right.
Echo Sanjan has his yellow blue Thorax deck that does not run token generation. It does, for the most part.
Right.
It largely just plays its friends because they're so cheap and everyone gives additional.
Yeah, I think Thorax needs to be revisited, definitely. But at the time, for a quick farming deck when I only had a week to build, this was the best I could come up with. Honestly,
And it did fine, obviously.
it did great. Magical Misfire was not helpful in that tournament because no one was really running recursion. Everyone was running blue aggro.
Well, you're the one running the recursion school shutdown.
That's true.
You need to misfire before throwing one of those.
Yeah,
off.
which, by the way, in one game, it did cost me the game to shut down without misfiring first.
Yeah, see, there you go. All right. Any final thoughts on this deck?
No, not really, other than, the obligatory color discussion that everyone always has. Does orange count as an actual color in this deck? Can you really?
Why? Because
there's only
because
three?
one orange friend.
Yeah, one orange friend.
I'd call an accessory.
We'll call Catterjack is now an accessory, folks.
She's an accessory.
She's an accessory.
Let's say it one more time. She's an accessory.
She's an accessory.
All right. Are you ready to move on?
Okay, the last deck we are going to cover, and we still have about 10 minutes left in the stream. But that should be enough time to talk about. This was perhaps one of my favorite decks to play in the entire tournament. I only got third at Illinois with it, but it was a blast to play. Whoever would have thought that Alicorn aggro would be a thing in the meta?
And particularly, was this played as a Harmony or a core deck? No, this is a core deck.
It's a core. It was a core tournament. Core Alicorns.
And I think I'm assuming, and I cannot speak for everybody, that most people, when it came to building Alicorn decks, thought of or had in mind the Alicorn concept from the Celestia Solstice deck, where you would use Celestia and just give +1 to all your Alicorns.
Yep.
And there was a lot of good entries showing up for that deck.
Well, and the only reason this deck made it into the core format is one very, very specific card.
Flash Sentry.
All, AKA Brad.
Yep.
I will tell you that turn one, typically, what's really fun to do with Tempest in this deck is turn one, go into Pony of Shadows on your trading traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And count how many times you do that and how many people think you're going to put out that grubber. I actually had someone accidentally try to hand their hand to me before I had pulled out the Troublemaker.
That should be a lesson for everybody. And as a Tempest player, if your opponent does hand you their hand, before you grab your grubber, grab something else. Stronger Troublemaker.
Exactly.
Help that player out by teaching them a lesson. You don't react until you're sure what's going to happen.
Exactly. Don't just hand the person your hand when they're playing Tempest, because they could grab a Pony of Shadows, and that's going to become a more common play, I think, as the meta goes on. And once again, this is a 4-color deck. So how do you go about meeting all this color rec? Well, there are 7 color fixers in this deck, besides Trading Tradition.
You do have the 7 color fixtures. I am noticing that there's favorite color fixer is my redeeming qualities. which I do not see, and it does not have a grubber. Not a grubber, the Klugetown Citizens.
Nope, it does not. So here's the thing about the core version is even though Klugetown would be great, typically what you would do is of course you're going to have 3 purple guaranteed. So what do you call on Trading Traditions with this deck? Well, you're going to call yellow. Yeah.
And is that for your Twilight and Tempest?
No, because after flipping your main 2 turns later, it's really nice to throw down a Flash Sentry, a Cover to Cover, and a Day Shift.
Okay.
And that is a turn 3 play. And that's where a lot of Alicorn aggro's speed comes from. Is if you draw Flash Sentry with a Cover to Cover and a Day Shift, in approximately 3 turns, you can drop 3 friends that give you a lot of power in the deck. The strongest card in this deck isn't the Twilight or the Luna. It's the Day Shift. And I think that when players start seeing how strong Day Shift is with Twilight and Luna, we're going to start seeing a lot more people removing Day Shift. And honestly, this deck benefits from the loss of Berry Punch and Orange Swirl. That was the biggest threat to Twilight.
And that's the main reason I'm so upset about the loss of Berry Punch and Orange. Twilight is ridiculously hard to remove. And you have to do everything you can to get your opponent to spend their AT so they can't protect her.
Which, in this deck, because of Flash, and because of the Cover to Covers, and because of the Factory Jacks, this deck will have always enough AT. And the ridiculous amounts of Prepared. And it's hard to get over because of all the power. Because once you drop a Twilight, which is really easy to do, like 2 turns after you drop a Cover to Cover, a Flash Sentry, and a Day Shift, it's really easy to just drop a Twilight and a Luna only a few turns later. Because even though you have to color fix, if you have to color fix, say, white and orange, that's 2 AT via Singing Barrel, and Luna's going to cost 2 less anyways. So for 5 AT, you're still color fixing into those colors and still playing the Alicorn. And once you get a second Flash Sentry in play, those Alicorns cost 1 AT.
Turn 2 Flash Sentry into Cover to Cover is pretty sweet deal.
Yes, it's an extremely sweet deal.
I mean, it even does a turn 2 Flash into Barrel into Day Shift as a turn 2 play as well.
Well, usually turn 2 you could do Flash into Twilight into Day Shift, because you can just exhaust you can exhaust the Cover to Cover for an AT.
Wait, turn 2 Flash into Twilight means you have 1 AT.
Exhaust Twilight for an AT.
Oh, you're Trading Traditions in a yellow. Right.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So you're usually going to be able to drop all 3 of them turn 2, or if you want to put out a Troublemaker to defend your Trading Traditions, it's turn 3. Usually you want to protect your Trading Traditions because there's so many decks out there right now that love that 4 confront requirement. You want to defend it somehow, usually. So, and another thing to note is I went up against a control deck, and I had to play
Wait, Dratta, I'm sorry. You can't do that turn 2.
What?
Sentry into Cover to Cover and a Day Shift won't work because you won't have enough yellow rec.
That's right. Yeah, you have to flip Tempest first. You're right.
Yeah, I knew something was off. All right, what were you saying?
Okay, so one of my matches, my first match with this game, I went up against a pink-white control deck. I managed to win, but I played extremely conservatively, and it was a control game with an aggro deck. That was a lot of fun. Actually, by the end of it, he had copies of my Twilight and my Luna, and he couldn't win the game.
Huh. And that's your Tricorn.
Yep.
Or what do we call this? Tri-Twi. It's your Tri-Twi.
Yep, the Tri-Twi. And Yeah, he had apparently copied my Luna and my Twilight with Evil Twin, and I think he Evil Twinned another one. My other one, and it's like, what do I do?
Man, this it's hilarious with how powerful Cadence, Twi, and Midnight are compared to Day Shift. Or not Day Shift,
High Noon.
High Noon.
High Noon.
High Noon is just what happened.
I know.
I guess technically with Flash Sentry you can put it into play for 1-8 if you got your or anything out there.
Technically with, well, you could get her out, I think, for free with Flash. Isn't she a no, she's 2 less cost, right?
If you have more friends than the opponent.
Yeah,
so you have a Flash Sentry into her, and there's a chance you can play her for 1AT.
Twilight is just the result of the fail of High Noon. Celestia failed, so Twilight had to make up for it. Because High Noon was also removal protection.
Right.
Just Twilight does it better.
Yeah, no, Twilight. Yeah, High Noon was, but it's you had to bounce it to hand, and well, I guess if it only costs 1 AT to play, it's not terrible, but
yeah, Twilight.
And it did protect against frightening, but yeah, Twilight is better protection against frightening.
Yeah,
because nothing gets frightened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, Luna can't frighten herself to copy if you have Twilight in play.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, not that you would do that in this deck, but... And, you know, those natural leaders, Tempest and Twilight natural leaders, you wouldn't believe how much power they get. Because when they're at a problem, they count for themselves. A really fun play to do is to put Twilight and Tempest at a problem with your Pony of Shadows and drop a Raptor Razor for 1 AT.
And so you get all the double ATs.
So you get 8 critters, and I did that to the pink-white player, and they actually had to play a party of 1 because they could not deal with the 8 critters there. And I didn't have enough real friends in play for them to really remove anything, so they decided the party of 1 to remove a bunch of 1-powered critters.
Yeah, the +1 effect is very underrated. I think people forgot about how strong Critter Choir was in fast food.
Yeah.
Because of all the resource removal, like people do not play that card very frequently. Recently combined it with the new Cloud Chaser and Flitter card to give +2 to every character at a problem. It's really fun to pay 1 AT and drop 3 powered friends.
By the way,
feels good.
Everything in this deck is protected by Appaloosa. Whether or not it has 2 power. I once was playing against someone running purple, and they tried to napcakes a 4-power Applejack because Twilight was in play. Or no, they tried to dismiss Applejack with Appaloosa and Twilight in play with a belly flop, and they couldn't.
Why is that? Because Applejack, Factory Jack becomes 3.
No, 4 power, because Twilight Endless Friendship gives +2 power.
+2, not +1. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, once she's in play, everything's Appaloosa protected, yeah.
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 So, plus a lot of Celestia and Twilight. And it just happens to be that my favorite princess is in there.
Mine isn't.
Nope. Cadence is too hard to color fix for this deck. And that's something...
I wonder what you could do with Cadence, and maybe that's what I'll do. Build a jank High Noon in Cadence deck. Because that's what I do.
I would love to see that. Just splash in Flash Sentry to drop
just flash. That's the plan. It's going to be 4 colors.
4? No, technically, if you do that, it'll be 5 colors.
5 colors, yeah, because of High Noon has blue as well. Wow. All right, I think we've discussed this deck plenty.
Yep.
Any other thoughts about it? EA Council, just if removal wasn't hard enough already.
Yeah, I know, right?
Now that's there.
Yeah. I mean, so much removal protection and so much removal in the meta right now. So,
Fortunately, this deck does not have much removal.
no, it doesn't.
It's ironclad to keep its own pieces in play. Aside from Midnight's Frightening, you get 3 banish opportunities with Friends You Need.
Oh, I have a story about that. So
Okay.
I was up against mono yellow Nurturing Nature. I could have won that game, but I made an error in the middle of the game. I forgot Yona had Persistent.
Mm-hmm.
That was my fatal mistake in that game. I could have taken this deck to top spot had I attempted to use Luna. If I used Luna on his Yona.
On Yona. And then Friends You Need.
Yeah, and then I'm the friend you need. Instead, I frightened another one of his friends, and you tried to use I'm the friend you need on a unfrightened Yona.
Yep. Foolhardy.
Very foolhardy, but that's my one regret for that tournament. Still did pretty well, though, in an all-aggro tournament.
And that's a discussion for another time. Putting Swift on a persistent friend is a mistake.
Yes.
Because a frightened friend at home is 4 AT to get to a problem. It's usually strong enough removal unless it's a very important friend. Yona would be worth paying 4.
Oh, yeah.
But then you only have to pay 3 to get it back to a problem? No.
Yeah.
Redonk. Anyway, we're done with this deck, and I think we're pretty much close to our time limit, right?
Yep, we are. And guys, these were, maybe not necessarily, some were first place decks, some were just interesting decks that I think people should definitely take a more closer look at, especially with the new ban changes coming up. And we'll continue to monitor the meta going forward. And I look forward to doing more videos like these in the future. And Silver, any final thoughts on the meta besides how much aggro was in it this time around?
I expect to see more friend-based aggro decks to continue. I love that yellow is back, and it's back with the vengeance. So much so that mono yellow is pretty disgusting in a good way. With the loss of Berry Punch and Orange Swirl, expect to see more of your favorite friends sticking around. Exactly. I think this is a very good thing for deck building opportunities, because a lot of the creativity that you could do would be between the interactions of the various cards. A lot of decks weren't even considered that had a lot of fun mechanics because you just knew, this powerful friend is going to get removed right away. Even with an effect such as Twilight's, when Berry Punch could just snag it and retire it, it kept the player from using Persistent or any of the other protective keywords. Having to steal something become more expensive is just, in all honesty, as much as I love to do that, it's going to make deck building more fun in the long run. So I look forward to seeing a continued variance in the tournaments and in our Hacko and other informal competitions that we as players participate in.
Yep, and I see cards like Try and Cadence becoming very valuable cards as the meta goes on. Pony of Shadows will definitely be a very heavily searched for card, I think. A lot of players, a lot of us are going to be looking for this stuff, and that's going to make the value of some of these really hard to locate. But that's with... Go ahead.
Everybody buy more Friends Forever so I can buy your extras.
Yes, right. Buy more Friends Forever. Do that. But
no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm also excited to see a number of new showing up in the online spaces and looking to build decks and collections and looking at older cards. A lot of these older cards are still out there and available as well.
Yep.
So just buy those sets too.
Yeah, exactly. Also, we had in our championship, we had several players that had never made top 8 and were brand new to the game make top 8 at the core championship.
Awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so I was super excited to see so many people come out and forth, so many players improve. Players that, normally, don't, a lot of people are getting way better at the game in our area. So the competition here in the Midwest is skyrocketing. It's giving me a challenge to think about what kind of decks to build and stuff. It definitely makes me think Winnie City coming up here in a few weeks that I'm going to be going to. I'll be playing in the core championship to defend my title, and I'll be playing in the Harmony tournament as well, where I placed 3rd last year. And I'm a little worried.
Nice.
So anyways, guys, thanks for sticking with us through this review of some of the more awkward decks of the Store Championships. And as always, if you're looking to contact me, you can contact me via dratta.arcana@gmail.com or contact me via Dratta Arcana Gaming on Facebook. And if you're looking for any of my content, it should be up on my Twitch channel as well as up to YouTube. And as always, guys, thanks for joining me on Dratta Talks tonight. And with me is
the ever-loving LivingSilver
and Dratta Arcana. And we'll see you guys on the next video.